There's another question maybe you'd want to think about. How do you know the difference between an illness and a bad attitude? So concerning your own family, would you say that the problem was illness or the problem was just bad relationship?
Could have been, for me personally, I feel it was both. So,
Both?
yeah. Yeah, bad.
Oh, there's a huge difference. Illness is nobody's fault.
Right.
And it's totally unpredictable. It strikes without warning. Bad attitude, that's something we can take responsibility for. And you can predict it. There are certain indicators. Another thing you have to ask yourself, given a little bit of effort and a few minor changes, could your parents have made it work?
No. I have no idea.
It's been
I don't know what it is, but
26 years of trying, succeeding. It's a bit,
I would imagine not. If that's why they split. Like, I would imagine they didn't just split because they were like, "Hey, it's not working. Let's stop." Like, I'm sure they tried to make it work. Splitting is a huge thing. I would imagine they went through what they could to make it work, and the fact that they did split it was probably because they already went through that stage of trying to make it work and that didn't work.
I think many divorced couples, after a number of years, look back at it and say, you know, we weren't that far off. If we had both made a few adjustments, it would have been okay. Of course, it's too late now, but... And that's what gives them the courage to try to remarry and do it again. But if they think that they were so off, that they were so mistaken, they're terrified. They're not going to try it again.
Unless they blame the other half entirely.
Which is probably why they got divorced. Yeah, if you blame the other entirely, you're not really working on a relationship. But let me tell you a little story that I think is helpful in this, just as a general attitude. I was invited to speak in South America, Argentina. It was a long, miserable trip. From Minnesota to New York to Dallas to Buenos Aires. And I was not in a very good mood when I got there. So the shliach is supposed to pick me up and take me to the airport, from the airport to the hotel. And I'm looking forward to finally getting to the hotel. On the way there, he says, we made an appointment with a woman who had a terrible tragedy and has been severely depressed. She agreed to talk to you. She hasn't left her house in 6 months. She agreed to talk to you, so on the way to the hotel, we'll stop there and you'll talk to her. And I was not very pleased. First of all, what do you say to somebody who had a serious tragedy? What do you mean, talk to her? And she's severely depressed? What am I supposed to do? But more than that, you didn't even ask me. You went ahead and you made these arrangements. So I was really upset. Anyway, we got there, and the woman tells me all about how great her son was. He was 19, he died in a car accident. Really a special guy. Okay. When she finishes describing how great he was, I said, well, you got to appreciate that you had him for 19 years. She did not buy it. So I said, I understand the shock of it all. It was so unexpected. It was so sudden. But imagine if you had known up front that it's only going to be for 19 years. Imagine if God had come to you and said, I'm looking for a mother for a very special guy, but he's only going to be here for 19 years. Would you be his mother? What would you have said? I was pretty sure that she would say, well, yeah. She said, absolutely not. So just as a reaction, I said, well, then it's a good thing he didn't ask you. It was amazing, the flood of tears that opened up. She like dissolved into tears and came back to life. It was probably the most dramatic, the most emotional moment I've ever experienced. And to literally see those dead eyes come back to life, it was amazing.
Why did she break at that point?
Huh?
Why did she break? What about that made her break?
I'm not sure. Why that struck the right chord, I don't know. But anyway, now we're in the car going to the hotel. And I'm thinking, I'm upset that he didn't ask me. And if he had asked me, I would have said, absolutely not. And it would have been the wrong answer. So actually, God does us a kindness by not asking. Because if he would ask us what challenges we want on our plate, we would always embarrass ourselves with the wrong answer. We would always say, oh, no, I can't handle that. And it would be the wrong answer. So it's actually a kindness. God does us a favor and doesn't let us embarrass ourselves with the wrong answer. He puts things on our plate that belong there. He knows we can handle it. We don't think so. He does. And so it's very nice that he doesn't ask us. Can you imagine what kind of creepy guys we would be if we checked everything out and approved everything that's going to happen in our lives before? We'd be such wimps. We'd be terrible. Because anything that sounds a little different than no, absolutely not. We actually have to make a special bracha, thanking the Eibishter for not asking. That's true for you, and it's true for your parents. They were given a plate full of stuff, and if they had been asked, they would have said no. So the marriage that they had, was it wrong? Should they never have gotten married to each other? Was that a mistake? If God had asked them, they would have said no. But God didn't ask. So it can't possibly be a mistake. It was all his decision. If it had been your parents' decision, maybe they made a mistake. But it wasn't. So they were married to the right person, and that's the tragedy of it. If they made a mistake, okay, people make mistakes. Can't shoot people for making a mistake. So if you make a mistake, you marry the wrong person, you apologize, you say, oops, sorry, bye, and it's over. I'll be more careful next time. But it's not a mistake. And that's why the divorce is such a tragedy. These are the people that God needs to be married to each other, and they couldn't do it. So getting married is like merging two people into one. Getting divorced is like an amputation. You got to cut them apart. And even if they say they're relieved, they're so happy they got divorced, that's fine. but it's an amputation. Because it was not a mistake. Of course, if you could entertain the possibility that it was a mistake, that would mean that you're a mistake. If they should have never been married, you should have never been born. So I was introduced once before a speech. The introduction included that I had 14 children. And at the end of the speech, about an hour later, this woman raises her hand and says, 14 children? She didn't hear a word after that. I said, yeah. She says, do you know that some people don't have any? And for a moment, they caught me off guard. I felt really guilty. I mean, I was taught to share. How do you take 14 kids and leave people with nothing? But then I realized that you really can't have somebody else's kids unless you marry the wrong person. No? If you married the wrong person, if this woman is not your wife, well, then these kids are wrong. She's somebody else's wife. These kids are somebody else's kids. Or half. Come, that's ridiculous. You can't marry somebody else's wife. There's never a mistake. And therefore the children born from it is never a mistake. It's absurd. If you think it's a mistake, then your whole idea of marriage is flawed. If marriage is a human decision and you can make a mistake and marry the wrong person, then marriage is not as awesome as they make it out. It's a decision. You choose a partner for your business, doesn't work out, okay, fine. It's not like that. So you have to rethink, what exactly is marriage? It's not two people trying to make a go of it. That's such a secular way of looking at it. Not two people attracted to each other for all the wrong reasons, and they get married for all the wrong reasons, and it's just a big disaster. That's not marriage. Marriage is a familiar miracle. How two people who are meant for each other find each other, that's a miracle. And sometimes it takes incredible earth-shattering events just to bring them together. Like a world war. Everyone is displaced. People from Russia find themselves in Hungary. People from Hungary find themselves in Canada. And that's where they meet their wife or husband. Without that world war, they would have never met. So it's a miracle how God brings people together who are supposed to be together, because marriage is a reunion. You have two men getting married. They can live happily ever after. They can have a good union. But it's not a reunion, so it's not a marriage. A Jew and a non-Jew can, God forbid, get married, live happily ever after. But it's a union. It's not a reunion. It's not two parts of the same soul. So it could be a good union, but you can't call it a marriage, because a marriage is a reunion. Now, how do we know when we get married? How do we know we're marrying another part of our soul? We don't. That's why the Gemara says that God stays up all night making shidduchim. Because we don't know. How could we know? What we need to do when we go out, we need to find someone who appeals to us enough that we hope that she is the one. And if she is the one, you'll end up marrying her. And if she's not the one, then no matter what you do, it ain't going to happen. You're not going to get married. because there are no mistakes. You never marry the wrong person. God doesn't allow such mistakes. Like, because if you can marry the wrong person, you can have the wrong children. I mean, what? This is crazy. Particularly Jewish children. God doesn't take chances with Jewish children. That's why speaking to your mothers, when they get together in their groups, the first thing they need to know is that there are 3 partners in the birth of a child. God is the 3rd partner, and he's a very active partner. In fact, he has veto power. He is not going to allow 2 foolish young people to create the future Jewish generation. Are you kidding? He's not going to do that. The future of Jews, Netzach Yisrael, he's not going to allow people to mess that up. That's why he's an active partner. And his part in it is to make sure that nothing goes wrong. So you cannot marry the wrong person. Once you're married to the person you're meant to be married to, well, now you have freedom of choice to either be nice or not be nice, to either be kind or cruel, to be generous or to be selfish. That God will not interfere with. He doesn't take away your bechira. But knowing that you have bechira, and knowing that you can make mistakes, he puts certain padding and protection around the child, that the child should not suffer what it's not meant to suffer. So with the mothers who think that they're responsible for their child's unhappiness and they're responsible for their child's psychological issues, that's an unnecessary guilt. Everything that happened is part of a plan. It's not the most pleasant plan, may not even be God's first plan, but it's plan B. And so nothing is going to happen that isn't supposed to happen. Whatever challenges you have, those are your challenges. They're meant for you to have these challenges. And because you have these challenges, you're given the ability to handle those challenges, and people who haven't had that challenge have no idea what it takes to do what you need to do. But you do. So, the first rule in life as a chassid, no regrets. No regrets. No second thinking. Chassidim say the word "if only" is apocryphos. If only things turned out, if I knew then what I know now, if my mother hadn't. Stop it. What is what was meant to be. It came through your mother's mistake, so fine, she was the tool. That's not why it happened. It came through your father's mistake. It came through a tragedy. Whatever it was, what you have on your plate is what you're supposed to have on your plate. So to question or to doubt or to blame it on something, and had that thing not happened, you would have a different life? This is your life. This is the only life you're going to have. And no matter what your parents would have done, you would have ended up with the same issues and the same challenges, because these are yours, not theirs. Woody Allen, when he was still a young comedian, gave out a record. This is back when records were the hottest invention. And he says, among other things, he was very funny. But you know, funny people are miserable people. The best comedians are the most miserable people in real life. Huh?
Robin Williams.
Yeah. So he was very funny, which tells you that he was miserable. So he says, I was in a car accident. I almost died. And my life flashed before my eyes. And I saw my sister Annabelle bringing the eggs in from the chicken coop. And my father Zeke was driving the mule back. Well, I said, wait a minute. I'm a Jewish kid from Brooklyn. The wrong life is flashing before my eyes, and I've got 2 seconds to live. The wrong life cannot flash before your eyes. You only have one life, and that's yours. So to think, my life got derailed. I was supposed to be way over there, but because my parents messed up, I end up here, and here is not even my life. I'm supposed to be there. There's my life. That's crazy thinking. This is your life. It's yours. And it's given to you for awesome divine purpose and reason. There's no regrets. You can be complaints. You're entitled to complain, but no regrets. No mistakes. No if only. It's not that somebody made a wrong turn and nothing's been right since. That doesn't happen. Not in God's world. That makes a huge difference in how you tackle the things you need to deal with. If it's something you believe you shouldn't be dealing with, but you have no choice, you're going to be very resentful. Dealing with it is going to be very hard because you're really not motivated. And you're always thinking, I shouldn't be doing this. I shouldn't have to do this. I shouldn't have to be putting up with this. And that's really depressing. But knowing that there are no mistakes, knowing that whatever it is you're dealing with is the reason for which you were born in the first place, makes a huge difference. If this is my challenge, well then bring it on. And there's no resentment and there's no regrets. Even if you can have serious complaints about the job being a little too hard. It may be hard, but it's never wrong. And the same has to apply to your parents. They had complaints, and it was too hard for them, but it was not wrong. So every effort they did invest was wonderful. For that, they will get credit forever. And then when it finally burst and they couldn't do it anymore, okay, it's a tragedy. But a tragedy is not a mistake either. No tragedy is a mistake. So there are 3 ways that a person can handle a problem. The first is, I don't want this. This is not what I thought my life would be. I don't agree with this, and I quit. I am not going to live another life other than the one that I wanted and planned and envisioned. So I quit. That's it. I'm wiped out. I cannot live the wrong life. That's obviously not very strong or very wise. The second reaction is, I'm tough. I will not quit. I will push ahead no matter what happens. That sounds nice. Better than the first one. But it's not wise. It's stubborn. It's not smart. Because what you're saying is, everything got messed up, but I'm tough enough to handle it. That's not true. The third way of handling it is, if this happened to me, then this is my life, and I like my life. So I will live my life without without being stubborn, without being angry at the world. This is my life. I like my life. So you proceed with a little pleasure to your efforts, because if it's mine, that's all I need to know. If this is meant for me, then I'm okay with it, because it's mine. We had a guy in Minnesota. He was a childhood friend of Bob Dylan. They went to camp together. They grew up together. When they were 16, they went summer. They went diving, and this kid dove off a cliff and didn't realize that the tide had gone out, and the water at the bottom was only about 5 feet deep. And he broke his neck. And he remembers floating with his face up. All he saw was blue sky, and he felt nothing because his spine was broken. And he was sure that he had gone to heaven, that he had died, and this is heaven. Nothing hurts, he's not cold, he's not hot, he's not, and all you see is the blue sky, and it's beautiful, and he's floating. Must be like what angels feel like, no? And then he realized that he's paralyzed from his neck down. He stayed in a wheelchair. He lived 46 years, which is a record. Nobody survives that long in a wheelchair, because nothing moves. So all your internal organs start to deteriorate. Your muscles can't hold them together. I mean, it's just, nobody survives that long when they're quadriplegic. But his attitude towards life was so amazing. Every now and then he would say, I know why God did this to me. I was an animal. I was an animal. He had to stop me. I was out of control. And people come to him, and they look at him with pity, and they say, how are you? And he says, I'm fine. How are you? Your shoes hurt? He said, I don't need shoes. Your shoes comfortable? He became a counselor, by the way. He did therapy with people coming back from Vietnam. Amazing attitude. I knew him for a number of years before he died, and 1 year his kidneys started to fail, and he had to be on dialysis. So every morning he had to go on the machine. It was 3 hours. It took him 3 hours to get out of bed, as it was before that. Now, in addition, there's the machine that he has to be on. And I went to see him, and he said, I think I've had it. I think I've had it. I mean, how much can you push? How much can you... And I thought, really, this is tragic. He's giving up. I came back 2 weeks later. He was back to himself. I said, what? What did you discover? What did you come up with? He says, life is good. If you say so. He's quadriplegic. What's good about life? I don't know. But he knew. Because when God gives you your burden, he gives you the stuff that goes with it to make it workable. I gotta tell you a really interesting story. Bob Dylan was his best friend. Whenever Dylan would come to town to perform, he would go to the concert, and Dylan would invite him up on stage, and they would sing together. And that was like, he looked forward to that. He sang pretty well, and it was his whole life. And Dylan bought him a van, with special whatever, with a driver, and every conversation you had with him somehow ended up involving Dylan. We brought him to New York one year, And we took him up for Kashel Bracha to the Rebbe, with the wheelchair and everything. And the Rebbe gave him Kashel Bracha. And you know the Rebbe's full of surprises, but this one was like, the Rebbe said to him, gave him the L'chaim, and he said to him, don't depend on anybody. They took him down from the, and I asked him, what did the Rebbe say? He said, I don't know. Who was he talking to? Don't depend on anybody? I can't do anything myself. To cough, I need somebody to help me. What did the Rebbe mean? And we were all like stumped. How do you tell a guy in a wheelchair for 40 years not to depend on anybody? A few months later, Dylan went into a bad mood and he cut him off. He broke up with him. Didn't get him the new van that he was supposed to get him. You know, if you have to update it every couple of years, no more. And concerts, no more. Finished. He was devastated. And then he realized what the Rebbe was saying. The Rebbe said to him, don't depend on anybody. And he was depending on Dylan. So for a while he was like down, and then bounced right back, and don't depend on anybody. Isn't that amazing? That's the Rebbe story.